Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about kind of a spoiler discussion about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I finally saw it. Like I said, this is just going to be a straight up spoiler discussion show. I'm going to, obviously just giving my general thoughts. I really enjoyed it. I think the movie does such a good job of just being fun, but also being this fantastic, fantastical while also being like a fantastic action movie. Because I think they do such a great job of cementing, of showing you just how different Shang-Chi is from like every other, we've had plenty of amazing action movies over the course of this, run that is the MCU, but I think this cements, it just shows you this is on some next level, showing you how distinct Shang-Chi is, as well as everyone else in this movie, the martial arts, because everyone else is just doing regular hand-to-hand combat, but this is martial arts. It showcases just how different, setting the action in this apart from something like Captain America. And I think that's such a neat little distinction, well, not even a little, but a big distinction between this movie and anything else in the MCU. And I think but also, like I said, the fantastical element, the fact is we are going deep into the mystical sides. I think the argument could be because there's always the Thor thing, in the MCU, more so it was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that joked about oh, Thor, they're not gods, they're aliens. So, but you had the fantastical elements there, but never leaning into the more mystical side of things like this. Well, I'm being a complete and utter idiot. We have with Doctor Strange, obviously, but we've never touched on the mystical side like this. So I think that's going to be interesting, and I think maybe this in itself can set the tone from Doctor Strange going forward. I mean, obviously the next movie is going to be Into the Multiverse of Madness, but I'm curious, we definitely could see a lot more, because we've seen it a little bit in spoilers, what if the more mystical side of things, especially in the episode with Doctor Strange, which was episode 4, the different creatures he was absorbing and stuff like that. So obviously there's other things in this universe that what if had touched on, but this was our first time really getting this was basically kaiju level stuff happening, and I'm we've never gotten this in the MCU, which sets this apart even more so. I mean, the closest would be Doctor Strange with the whole Dormammu is the closest thing. I mean, he's not a kaiju, but borderlining on that level. And I guess you could make the argument Ego's on that same level as well, but still. But I really like the introduction to it, learning for one, the Mandarin. I love that whole bit when he's explaining it later on about basically Iron Man 3. I love the fact is that he was yeah, someone used they didn't know my real name, so they came up with the name, the Mandarin. They named themselves after a chicken dish. I love that. I'm oh, cool, I didn't know that. I love that, and I love that they lean into it, because he's he never describes himself as the Mandarin. Obviously that's the character's name from the comics, but for him it's I'm Winwu. They just didn't know my name, so they needed something imposing, and it's yeah, they picked the, and I think maybe that's supposed to be a commentary on you don't know what this word actually means, and you just use it because you thought it sounded cool. It's someone getting a tattoo of oh, let me get something written in Chinese or Japanese, and it's oh, that says dumplings. That happens, so maybe that's what that's supposed to be a wicked nod at too as well. So I think that's fascinating. But obviously learning about his history, because when I saw the trailers, I was isn't that supposed to be the Mandarin? But we see him present day. I'm is it just a generational thing? I was at first I was is the Mandarin a title that gets held, passed down? It's once again, that's just BS that someone made up. But it's no, the Mandarin, because of the 10 rings, he gained immortality, which now begs the question, I'm jumping around a lot, I do apologize, but it does beg the question, does that mean Shang-Chi is immortal now? Which is interesting too, because obviously on the same level, feel however you want to feel about the show. I like the show, but I'm curious when will Marvel ever touch on it again? Will be the Iron Fist, because these are in that same realm of each other, Iron Fist and Shang-Chi, because it's known as the immortal Iron Fist, and obviously that's correlated and connected to a dragon, because the Iron Fist power comes from a literal dragon's heart. So it's eventually these two worlds are going to collide, or maybe because they already did Shang-Chi, because of that, Shang-Chi is going to be the Iron Fist's replacement going forward, or maybe they will eventually bring those two together. I don't know how much interaction they've ever had together in the comics or not. But like I said, they're in that same vein to some extent. So, but regardless, going back to it, I just think it's interesting, and it is, once you could use that power for good, but what do? It's of course, now Winwu uses it for evil. It's oh, I want more power, or more and more, and obviously built the 10 rings being this large-scale organization. I guess just because I'm more associated with that in that regard, it's kind of the DC equivalency would be like the League of Assassins slash League of Shadows that kind of do that. They like disable countries and do a lot of stuff. Now, whether it's in the name of good, I don't know, or whether it's just like a, nah, this is for profit and power. We're not tripping and pretending like this is for any greater good. Whereas like League, you know, then I mean, I guess also you could think of like the Widow program kind of works the same way. Granted, like the Ten Rings has been going back way back in the day, because obviously like he's been around for like 1,000 years. So because obviously when I think of like the 1,000-year thing too, it also makes me think of the video game Lost Odyssey. I won't go into it too much, but it deals with like immortals who've been around for like 1,000 years. But regardless, but I do like our introduction to Shang-Chi's life, you know, or going by Sean, meeting his buddy Katie, and obviously learning about their lives is that they're just like valet drivers, and like obviously like Katie's parents want her to do more because she does like have degrees in certain things, but she just chooses. But for her, it's like no, I don't want to do that. Like I enjoy my life being what it is, and I even love that like I don't know whether it's just because Shang-Chi like spent so long hiding that it's like right, he enjoys his life, it gets him away from the life that he had before, so he leans into like what Katie's like, oh no, I want to do this, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's like yeah, like what's wrong with being a valet? Like because they're talking to their friend was it Sue, who they've known forever, and it's like yeah, we used to get in trouble together, but she's like I grew up. It's like whoa, what do you mean you grew up? Yeah, what do you mean you grew up? And it's like yeah, she's married and like kind of becoming a responsible adult. But it's like, yeah, we should probably go home and be responsible adults and go to sleep because we got an early day tomorrow. And then they're going karaokeing and drinking and just having a fun time. And I think that's so interesting because it's like, we've had some lackadaisical characters in the MCU, but it's just like, I think the closest obviously we could have is like, Tony would be the most lackadaisical character we've had in the MCU so far. So like someone kind of, you know, he's still running this big business, so he has that benefit where they're kind of with the lower end, are just like, yeah, we're kind of living day by day, very, like I said, very laissez-faire. But I just think that's such a neat introduction for them as characters, of knowing that that's who they are. That maybe in some ways you could look at them as kind of slackers, but I wasn't expecting things to kind of hit the way it did, because it's just kind of like, cool, it's a, yep, everyday life, and immediately get hit with the boom, Razor Fist and his boys, because they work for his dad, and it's like, right, his dad wants to pin it. And obviously, like, because in her mind, Katie's like, Sean can't fight, wait, what? Because she protected him from a bully back in the day, because her whole shtick is like getting in someone's face and singing Hotel California, because it's like, right, it catches like idiots off guard. I love that we did bring that tactic back at least one more time. I was hoping she was going to use it a little bit more, but I guess later situations never really presented the opportunity. But I love that obviously he does what he does on the bus, and that whole sequence being what it is freaking phenomenal. I love the guy like recording, being like, you got this, and the guy pulls out the Razor Fist pulls out his razor blade and he's like, never mind, I'm sorry, and he's recording this, and just like, I just love that whole sequence, just like, especially later on when it's just like Shang-Chi just getting everyone to the other side of the bus while like the bus ended up falling apart. So it's I mean, just like everything in totality in that scene, it's just amazing. Especially when he's like grabbing people. He's grabbing one lady who's like leaning out the window. He's got another dude blocking him with his leg to make it so that that guy doesn't fall out. Also to know that his father's coming after his sister, which I love that the whole thing, that whole operation, the underground fights and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, the moment you came here, you signed up for that. That's because that's, you know, which I'm bouncing all over the place, because I do love like getting our Shang-Chi's like origin story, but I love that like the lady interrupts it. It's like, ooh, we're out of this, so do you want beef or veggies? Oh, we'll take veggies. Oh, that's not, oh, it looks like we're out of veggies, so what would you like? Beef, because that's the only thing you got left, right? And she's like, okay, so what would you want? It's just like, lady, I love it. But it's just like, yeah, this serious moment of learning my backstory, and then it gets interrupted like that. I love that. But because I also love Katie was just like, wait, like I've known you like half your life and I didn't even know all this. Like, what's going on? You gotta let me know. Like, you know what? I'm going with you, because it's like, wait, you have a sister I didn't even know about, which she wasn't too happy to see him. Jiling blames him obviously, because it's like, right, you left me behind. Like, he went on an assignment and never came back. it took a while in the movie for me to be like, he killed the person. That's even more reason why he didn't come back because he didn't do it. He didn't come back because he did do it, and he, you know, lost himself from it. I mean, I think that's kind of an interesting thing, you know, between him and his dad both being lost for so long. And maybe the argument could be that Xiling is the only one who kind of, well, she found herself, or like at least found her place in the world. She had to forge it on her own because like she had to get away from her dad because Shang-Chi left her. Like, it's like, right, you left and you never gave a second thought about coming back for me. You left me with dad. It's like, she's like, the only way I was able to avoid dad's wrath and just like, you know, everything that he, you know, because she could, well, to be fair, because her dad, like, all she ever got from her dad was like a little bit of resentment because like when their dad looked at her, all he saw was their mother, who, you know, he lost the love of his life. And so, because that also makes me wonder, like, I guess it's kind of also implying like in the 1,000 years he's been around, that's the first time he ever had children, because I guess he was always so obsessed with power, he never felt anyone equal enough to like settle down with. So maybe that's kind of the argument. But I was like, yeah, it's like, oh, I thought you would have had like, I thought you would have done it's not a great example to make, but I thought you've been on some Genghis Khan. But it was like, no, he wasn't. He just like, Xiling and Shang-Chi, at least that we're aware of, are the only children he has. And so, and I guess that's kind of the whole point too, just solidifying like how much he was trying to change, that he was willing to give up everything to settle down. But my point was like Xiling went off and kind of started her own enterprise, like those underground fights and stuff like that. I actually thought John was going to be a bigger part of the movie or something like that. It's like, no, he wasn't. He's just in like that one scene, and then the scene at the end I thought was interesting. But she had to forge her own way, like in this world, survive on her own without her brother. It's like, you weren't there for me all those years ago. Because she's like, it took me a long time, a couple years before I realized I didn't need my brother anymore. Like, I'd find my way in this world, because the 3 days he was supposed to come back afterwards turned into a week, then a month, then years. And it's just like, yeah, I completely just gave up on you after like 6 years and just didn't even think about you anymore because I found my own way forward. Because going back to his sister would have meant going back to his dad after what he had done, and he just couldn't. He just wanted to pretend like none of it happened, none of it mattered. Because of all, I mean, to be fair, like, he was trained like into be an assassin since he was 7 years old, and the abuse and the pressure to be that, you know, because even he said, like, I would do anything my father asked me to. If he asked me to burn this world down, I would have. But obviously that wasn't a good thing, because I think in that moment he did what his dad wanted him to, because on some level he wanted it too. Obviously, that being his mom's killer. They found him and he tracked him down, and it was up to him. It's like, right, you did end this for both of us. And then when you come back, I'll restart the 10 rings and restore it to its former glory. But it's because as a young, I mean, to be fair, he was a kid. He was like 7 or something probably at that time. But it was like the thing that Shang-Chi he was hurting just as much as Wenwu was. It's like he lost his mom and he couldn't do anything for her. So when his dad's like, oh, I'm gonna get some revenge, like he's like, right, I'll work with you, dad. So like his dad pressuring him, like, yeah, this is all for your mother's sake, so let's do this. Like, you know, he didn't really know what he was signing up for. And I think maybe that internalized a lot of guilt for him, being like, right, I kind of put this on myself. Because his sister didn't have, like, the problem was Shang-Chi got all the attention. It's like, yes, he was put through the ringer, but at least from Jiling's perspective, at least he got their father's attention. She had to be silent in a way, because like all her training she did because she based it on what they were being taught. She's like, right, I have to be better. I have to do what they do, but I have to be even better, because I guess in her mind it's like it was the only way she would ever get her father's attention, you know? And in a weird way, like, it's all about both of them trying to get their father's love in a similar, like, different ways. Because she wanted to prove herself, but, like, nothing was ever good enough for her dad, because he wouldn't look away because you look too much like your mom, and it's just a reminder that she's gone. And, Shang-Chi just wanted his father's love as too, and he's like, right, like, this way dad will be here for us to some extent. But obviously he was so consumed with revenge, because even then, like, when Shang-Chi would like fail in any training stuff, his dad would just walk away like, oh, I'm disappointed. So it motivated him even more to push himself further, because it's like, right, my dad does care for me, but only when I succeed, so I've got to prove myself. So very twisted, you know, family dynamic. Speaking of the fights that I brought up earlier, we never actually got any explanation of like why Wong was there and why he was with Emil. You know, is that supposed to be, because that's supposed to be Abomination and not God, what's it, the Hulkling? I don't think that's it. I think that's supposed to be Abomination. I can't remember Hulkling's name. It's not Emil, is it? because I haven't seen the Incredible Hulk movie in forever, since the last time I rewatched it for my MCU rewatch, and that was a couple years ago. So I don't know. I don't know what I would what crossed my. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, I was kind of getting lost in my thoughts there. But I love that, like, right after the fight, they immediately bounce. I'm like, you were just here just to go. And I love John Van. Man, I love that guy. Because it's like, yeah, I guess everyone knows who Wong is, because even later on, it's like, oh, we know who you are. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're, like, tied to the Avengers. Everyone must know about Doctor Strange now. Because they do have the conversation, because this was what their friend Sue was bringing up, like, right. Life is too short to just kind of be doing dilly-dallying, because it's like, right, half the world disappeared for 5 years out of nowhere. It makes you, we never find out whether or not, I'm assuming they got snapped too. They don't cover that, but you know, it's always a question of, like, when you're meeting people, you're like, who got snapped and who didn't? You know? We have a general idea because of Endgame who got snapped, well, Infinity War / Endgame who got snapped and who didn't, but in this particular regard, like, I'm curious, like, did Katie and Shang-Chi get snapped? Did his father get snapped? It makes me wonder. You know, stuff like that. And once again, they probably won't give any clarification on that, because it's probably not pertinent. But it is probably got to be the complicated thing going forward, because you're always going to have to be like, do we write in the fact that this person was snapped or not? If we add in the fact that they were snapped, that's going to lead to not snapped. Then it's going to lead to complications, because you're like, right, what were they doing for the 5 years in between Infinity War? Well, during the 5-year gap in the Endgame, like, do we have to cover that? What were they up to? So it's probably just going to be a lot easier just to be like, most of the time, they were snapped, and don't have to worry about it too much. So that's probably just going to be the justification. So they probably were snapped. I also appreciate the fact is that Katie got paid, and it's like, oh, where'd you get that money from? She's like, oh, don't worry. Wait, did you bet against me? What? No. Okay. Yes, she did. But obviously, I love that line from their dad when he shows up, and it's in the trailer. He's like, I told my men they couldn't kill you no matter how hard they try. I'm glad you proved me right, son. You know? So getting dragged back, Katie has to go, as well as Jiling. And so it turns out what he's trying to do is trying to bring his family back together, because he's trying to go to their mother's homeland of Talo, is a hidden village. Because a lot of this kind of feels like, it reminds me kind of like Naruto, but there's obviously a lot of, like, it makes me think of like Avatar: The Last Airbender / Korra type of situations, and feel and vibe, especially with a lot of the elemental stuff, a lot of the magical creatures kind of makes me, some of it actually kind of reminded me of like Final Fantasy, actually, like some of the like creature designs and stuff. It felt like something straight out of like a Final Fantasy game. But it is kind of interesting. I wasn't because I expected him just to be the full-blown villain, but I like that there are layers to him. That yes, for a very, very, very long time, he was a very bad guy. He was a conqueror. He, like, you know, he killed, he acquired power. He continued to do so with the organization of the Ten Rings, but he gave it all up for love. Like a chance encounter with their mother, he found love. You know, he went to the village purely for the fact is that he wanted to learn their martial arts style, because it was like a martial arts of the gods. And he wanted that. But he found something else instead, and he found love. It's like, I'm not the type of man your mother would have ever thought. I'd be the last person she'd ever consider falling in love with, but we fell in love and we had you. And obviously for her, like, she ended up giving up her powers, but having them was like the best thing ever. Like, it was all worth it in the end. And even he gave up the 10 rings for a while, not just the organizations, but the actual 10 rings themselves. Which I'm actually going to have to look into it, because I think I've talked about this before. I think I talked about it in my trailer discussions for, well, the trailers for this. But my only experience with the 10 Rings, because I'm not the comic book dude, is there was the animated Iron Man series. What was it? The New Adventures of Iron Man? Well, I can't remember. It was on Nicktoons. It ran from like 2009 to 2011. I think there was only 2 seasons, but like the main antagonist, kind of like introduced in the first season, but it kind of sticks all the way through in the second season, is the Mandarin. And him having all of the 10 rings. Each one does it. It's like the Infinity Stones. Like, each one does something differently. And once again, they're like the Infinity Stones, but I'm sure they wanted to give them a different design, because it's just like, oh, you wanted to separate them live action wise from the Infinity Stones so people don't confuse them. So instead of them being like rings on your finger, they're like armband rings. And so, like, them being used the way they are, like, they're used as kind of like projectiles that almost could be used like energy propulsion like type of weapons. So I'm curious to look into how they're used, because I don't remember from this particular cartoon what they did. Like I said, I think they each had their own individual abilities, like the Infinity Stones. So I'd have to look into like what they actually do in the comics, because that's not how they work in the comics. At least I'm pretty sure. So, that's just kind of one thing. But like I said, him giving them up for love is just kind of interesting. But the moment Shang-Chi's mom and Zhilong's mom died, he broke, and it was just like, right, if I had the 10 rings, if I hadn't given them up, those men never would have come here. The reason why they came after him in the first place is they were after Wenwu because of his past. You know, he thought he could leave his past behind, but it's like, no, I can't. And what did he do? He went out and got revenge. He made sure to kill everyone that was associated with his wife's death. And that's a complicated thing of like, yes, you might have like tried to give up your past, but your past will never like stop haunting you, because the fact is that it's so interesting, because like Shang-Chi tried to run from his past, and maybe the argument isn't that when Wu ran from his, he was running towards something rather than running away from something. But it's still the thing of, you wreaked havoc for 1,000 years, so of course karma was going to come back and strike you down, you know? It's like, this was something obviously in more recent years, but it's still the thing of like, it was because of what he had done, you know, all the death and destruction that followed him, and it followed him home and killed his wife, you know? And it's such a shame. Even to the point later on, like in the movie, like Wenwu is pissed at Shang-Chi, being like, you're the reason why your mom died. You did nothing and just stay there and let her die. But like Shang-Chi threw it back at him, being like, you weren't there when we needed you. Like, mom was gone. Like, you were all we had. But you were so obsessed and so focused on your 10 rings and your revenge, you weren't even there for us. Like, you should have, like, at the very least, we should have come first, but we didn't. You know? Because he was so caught up in his own hurt that he wasn't there to help them through theirs. But that's why he wants to go to Ta Lo, because he believes, like, right, there's a gate there, your mother's hidden behind it, they sealed her away, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's not. In actuality, there's a creature there known as Dweller in Darkness, who's whispering to him to open the gates, because the 10 rings are the only thing strong enough to open it, because countless times over the millennia, like over the thousands of years, there have been different people who've come there with the 10 rings trying to open up that gate. They were drawn in by that creature. Well, I don't know if she said specifically with the 10 rings. She's definitely, their aunt, Nan, did say, like, it was definitely people were drawn in by this creature's, like, deception. But I don't know if I don't remember if she specifically said, like, previous people with the 10 rings. I don't remember if she clarified that or not. I did love that it's like, because people are saying, like, of course he's going to have to be in the movie because we are dealing with the actual Mandarin now. And it's like, yeah, Trevor's here. And he's like, the reason why he's alive, I love that he's like, oh yeah, like, we all kind of got our dues. Home dude got, the terrorist got killed by Iron Man. I spent my time in jail until my dad broke me out. It's like, exactly, to kill you. Exactly. But he's like, yeah, I put on a performance and the lads have been eating it up, so I've been kept alive. I love that. It's just, I guess Win-Win was like, all right, fine, you proved yourself to be some talent, and you give the men some enjoyment, so cool, you're alive for now. I love that. You continue to be the snide bastard that you are. Even love later on when he's like, oh, don't worry, Morris, I'm not dead. It's called pretending. I even love how he explains to everyone, like, how he got into acting. It's because of the 1969 Planet of the Apes. He was like, yeah, I saw the monkeys on the horses, and my mom, I was like, oh, how did he do that? She's like, oh, it's acting, it's pretending. And from that moment on, it's like, because you saw monkeys on a horse. He's like, yeah, like, how did get them to do that? And Katie's like, you know what? Good on you, dude. I mean, granted, yeah, you wanted to become an actor because of that, which is sweet, but then obviously you didn't use your powers of acting for good because you tried to cripple the U.S. government, but, you know, good on you. So, which I love that creature Morris. It's not, like, I don't know why, it kind of, I don't, the Avatar comparison, like, I don't know why, but it reminds me of Appa for some reason. When I look at it, like, I mean, it looks nothing like Appa. It's kind of like furry like Appa, but I don't know why it makes me think of Appa. But I love the fact is that, like, for whatever reason, we never got an explanation why Trevor's the only one who can understand him. Because, like, Shang-Chi, Katie, nor Xiling can understand him. Like, why is it that he can? I guess it's like they created a special bond. I even love when he's like, wait, you can see him? Oh my god, I thought he was a hallucination. I'm glad. Oh, Morris! Calling him Morris and everything, too. But we never got his, like, because even, their aunt Nan was never like, oh, hey, you found your way back home, but it was never like a, what's his real name? It's just like, no, he's Morris. But I love it's like, right, he's like, I can lead you through the maze that will lead us to Talo. So there's a 90% chance, he's 90% confident he get, 19%. So I love that. But I like that whole, I love the design of that, like it being this giant maze and you have to do the right turns here and there, because only one time a year is the most direct path open. Every other path, obviously that's what happened when he first came there, is you get, like, the force will try to eat you, which once again, making my Final Fantasy comparison, it reminds me of kind of like, spoilers, the forest in Final Fantasy IX when it's starting to get petrified and like the whole crew is running for their lives. I love that sequence. I think that's one of the coolest, like, not AMV, cutscene sequences. Like, it's one of my favorites because it's just like, just regardless, I won't go into tangents about it, but it kind of made me think of that, like escaping a force it's basically trying to kill you. So I think that's pretty dope. So I really like that Katie gets put to work with the whole arrows and learning how to shoot them, and the guy who leads it is like, Gumbo is like, no, but it's like, because Katie talks about like why she never really goes after anything, because when she does try going for something, she eventually stops because she knows eventually she'll get bored of something. Like, it's like, rather than like taking the chance that she'll do something and be good at it but then eventually quit, and because she'll, you know, and disappoint herself in the future, she rather kind of be like, right, why like go above and beyond when I can just keep things as even kilter as possible? So like, why try? But it's like, if you don't, God, what was it that she was told? It was something very like, very like sage-like advice. It was like, if you don't take a shot, you'll never hit, or something like that. I'm butchering it, but it was like something that resonated with her. So she's doing her thing. And I even love when she shoots the arrow. She looks, it's like, oh, Gumbo, did you see that? That was tight. But also knowing like their equipment is based around like dragon scales and stuff like that. Their shields, their armor, their poles, and like their weapons. I even love Zhilong's, because that's her natural weapon, but now she has a dragon scaled version of it. I always forget what you call those guys, because I think of Joey from Yu-Gi-Oh! Kunai Whip Chain. I don't know if that was what they really, I think that's what it would be considered. It's kind of like Kohaku from Inuyasha. Kind of like, I think his is a little different because it's a siphon, not just like a kunai at the end of it. So I don't know if Kunai Whip Chain would be the actual appropriate name or not, but obviously, like, I thought that was such an interesting through line. Like I brought up earlier, that the fact is that Shang-Chi is the one that actually killed the guy that killed his mom, the leader of that, the Iron Gang or whatever. What I think is so interesting, though, is they kind of hinted at it throughout, because it's like, what did his father say to him? He's like, stop pretending. And then his aunt was like, right, you've got to basically accept all sides of yourself. And that was something his mom was saying, too. Like, the good and the bad, like, they are all as part of you. Your mom is just as much a part of you as your dad, and it's about taking both sides of what they have and what they've given to you and making it your own. And because of that, it's like, my dad trained me to be an assassin, so I'm gonna use that. And he's like, I'm gonna kill my dad. It's the only way to end this. It's like, yes, I know my dad loves my mom, but he's willing to go so far and beyond for this, that he's willing to destroy the last tie to the family we have. Like, the last ties to her is this village. This is her home. And so when the time comes, they lock and load. And like I said, I love that line of just like, right, you weren't there for us. You wanted me to, this is what you want, this is what you wanted me to be, right? You trained me to be a killer, and this is what I am. But his dad, hearing him being like, oh, like, you think mom would want to actually see you and what you become? And he attacks him, because in that moment, he like, because I think his own insecurities about it kicked in, and he was just like, no, you're saying what I am thinking myself. And he didn't like that. He didn't appreciate that. So that's what pissed him off. And so he attacked Shang-Chi and sent him flying into the water. And busting through Soul Eaters. Poor guy that I don't know his name, because they never actually said his name, but he's the dude that Shang-Chi went up against early on, and I think maybe that speaks volumes that it's there in him already, because like before his dad ended the fight, Shang-Chi like was thinking about everything he went through, and he was about to take. Now the question was he going to do the dramatic thing of like, oh, I'm gonna stab it right beside your face, or was it going to be a thing of, no, I am going to kill you? But it's like, oh, son, just calm down. It's good. It's good. You've proven yourself. You know. So, but the dragon, which it doesn't seem like it's Fing Fang Foom, it does seem like it's a different dragon. Because I think Fing Fang Foom would have that, because he typically, when they're depicting him, he does have the like humanoid body. This one looks like the serpent, your typical serpent dragon. So it did say like, you know, like, because it's that dragon is like the heart of their land and everything. Because we did find out like this is like the heart of like some dimensional universal stuff, because like connections between this realm and their world of like just the normal world. But there's like so much to Talo that like expands beyond, obviously, with its history of like fighting against the darkness, the dweller in the darkness, the great protector. I'm wondering, like, did a great, because obviously, like, there's still a lot of history about the rings that we're still unclear about and know next to nothing about. So I am curious, what did the Great Protector have on their side when they fought the darkness, dweller in the darkness, before pushing it back? I guess just the, well, because the dragon is the Great Protector, or the, like, or did, I think the dragon was the Great Protector and it still kind of is, or I'm kind of confusing myself on that point. But also just the fact is, putting all that aside, just the final battle in itself, like, once again, it's just like the mysticalness of it, just like a dragon, like Shang-Chi riding on a dragon. I'm like, we're seeing this is wild, and it's kind of almost doing some water bending on its own right when the Dweller of Darkness ended up getting released. That was pretty dope. But also just like Shang-Chi's battle with his father, that using what he was like learned, like, right, my mom, I'm just as much a part of my mom. It's like, right, get up, you have to be the one to do this. And so it wasn't even about killing his father anymore, it was just purely from stopping him. And I like, obviously, when he gets the rings, and I think it's such an interesting development between their fighting styles, that when they were fighting, at no point did Shang-Chi like put them on his arm like his dad. He kept them like levitating around him, just showcasing like the difference in their, like, dude, come on. Like, there's gifs of it. I think there was a gif of it like way before the movie even came out. But there's a moment he's using two rings to like step on them and then like jump down, and then like he brings down like a kick. I'm like, that is sick. And just like that cool like fighting thing, like where you got like powers involved, where it's just that thing of like how it just causes like a like large powerful impact. I'm like, that is sick. But even like Wenwu trying to like use all of them against him, like using the ones he has to push Shang-Chi back, but Shang-Chi like ends up getting all 10 rings. I wonder what's the symbolism behind the fact is that when Wenwu uses them, they're blue, but when Shang-Chi uses them, they're orange. Part of me is like, it probably just a, like, not just like from like, not just for the sake of the movie of a distinction, but I'm sure like on a level of just like, right, they look that way of blue because that's representative of him, and the orange is supposed to just represent Shang-Chi as a whole. Because part of me is like, it can't be a good and evil thing, because I'm like, he is supposed to be partly his dad. So I don't know, maybe it is just seen as like the gold. It's like, yeah, it's like he's purely good, or is it just supposed to be like the gold is the yellowish orangish gold is his influence, whereas the blue is his father's influence? I'm curious, like, would other people who've gotten rings, would there be different colors? Would someone different have red? Would someone else have green? I'm curious, is that how that would work? Or will it just end up bouncing between these two colors because it is just purely good and evil? I don't know. I thought, like, something I should also point out too, the movie's a lot more depressing than I thought it was going to be at the end there, because I was thinking like, okay, once the darkness dweller is dead, dweller in darkness is dead, everyone's soul's going to get really, nope, everyone's dead. I mean, it sucks because like his dad was, you know, because ultimately, like, Shang-Chi was going to, like, finish this the way his mom kind of finished things before. Like, we saw her use it, and, like, she incapacitated or, like, took him down using that move of circling all of them almost like in an orb-like form. And he was spinning it faster and faster, and it was kind of condensing down. And you're like, right, if he used this, it would probably kill his dad. But he threw it down because, like, I'm not trying to kill you, Dad. Like, your family needs you. And the sad thing is, I mean, at the end, he chose his family because he gave up the reins, because it's like, right, I'm in this position, I couldn't be there for you before, but I'm going to be here for you now, and gave Shang-Chi the rings, you know? And it's sad because at the end of the day, their father wanted to be a family again. That's why he wanted to get their mother back. It's like, despite everything. But the sad thing is, like, because when you've lived your life the way he has, when you spent like 1,000 years conquering and so much death and destruction, like, of course karma is going to come back to you this way. But, you know, maybe on some level, his spirit is released and he is with their mother again. He's with their, you know, so I think there's some silver lining to it. Hopefully they found each other in the afterlife or something like that. But it's sad. Well, one, all those people died and there was no coming back for them. But two, just they never had a chance to, like, because they haven't been a family since both Shang-Chi and Xiling were kids. Because in that moment, like, you know, after their mom died, like, he completely changed his way of approaching Shang-Chi, turning him into this assassin and weapon. Xiling doing everything to, like, get him to look at her like, notice me, Dad, and love me. And it's just like being 16 and finally getting away from him and building her own empires. I mean, my dad would never let me be a part of his. I went off and built my own. But like, they never had an opportunity, and now they were reunited after all this time, and they never had the time to just really be a family. And it's sad that, like, so much was left unsaid. So they never had the opportunity to make things right. You know, maybe in a way this was the gift that he kind of in a way brought to them, was reuniting his children after everything and giving his son the rings to do good with them, unlike him. That, you know, maybe you'll do more with this legacy than I was. That maybe that in itself can be the gift that his father was able to give them, you know, to an extent. So I think that's fascinating. But poor Gongwu, like, which sucks, like, you know, Katie's teacher is like, oh man, you know, he was like, right, don't die out there. And it's actually Katie that ends this, because she ends up like shooting its throat with the arrow. Like, she's like, I was down to my last arrow too. I also love that, like, Xiling was talking to Razor Fist. It was like, no, we need to work together. And then Home Dude he was like, no, we're the 10 rings, blah, blah, blah. Home Dude gets so sucked behind him, and he almost gets attacked, but Xiling protects him. And it's like, we should work together. I love that. So they are working together. Because I know in the comic books he does have two blades, so maybe him picking up the other blade was supposed to be a little bit of a reference to that. Because he doesn't have two hands. Like, his right hand situation is the same thing as his left hand situation in the comics. Like, it's just two blades on his, at least from the picture I saw of what the character looked like in the comics. I don't know if that was like a super, super original look at the character, and that maybe more modern versions of the character looks a little different. I don't know. But, together with the dragon and Xiling, like, obviously they put in some work against this thing. Once again, it's just like this is what we're seeing in a Marvel movie: a dragon fighting basically I guess you could almost look at it as a what's its name, a Cthulhu-like creature. I'm like, we're seeing this in a Marvel movie. This is nuts. Like, we've seen some wild stuff in the MCU, but come on, this is next level crazy. And obviously when the time comes, it's like, yeah, the creature's trying to suck up the dragon soul. And it's like, if we let it happen, this will be the end. But Shang-Chi is like, right. She's like, his sister's like, just let me go. But he's like, I'm not going to let you go again. And so I love that moment. It's just like how badass that is, of just them working together. Her using her whip to like hold it down in one place. And the dragon kind of grabbing onto it to hold onto it. Shang-Chi jumping up and like sending all the rings into its chest, floating in the air. I'm like doing some like, dude, this is some super awesome mystical stuff, dude. And just like doing the hand motions and stuff like that, and the rings like circling on its belly, and then just kind of like bam, kind of ending it and exploding the sucker. I was like, are you gonna seal it away? It's like, well, most of the dragon skills are broken, so there's no doing that. But yeah, they were able to end it. But like I said, having to say goodbye to there was just so much death at the end. Luckily Katie was fine, but so much death at the end there, and you're like, man, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that was kind of a bummer of an end to that battle. Once again, having to say goodbye to their dad, you know, eventually being reunited with their mom at a time when, like, in 1,000 years, like, we'll be all kind of reunited type of thing. And maybe in that time frame we'll be reunited. So like, that's why I'm hoping that, you know, it's like, right, kind of watch over us, but hopefully like we can lead you all into peace. You know, there were fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters that died today, you know, and let's honor their sacrifice, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have won this battle. So it does make you wonder, what does Taylor go. I mean, they still have the nature of like protecting like this realm, so yes, that beast is going, but there's probably still other nasties out there. I'm sure we'll tackle that in Doctor Strange too, of just like the other things out there across the multiverse and stuff like that, and other universes, those type of creatures. There's probably others like it that will probably come through. So I think we'll probably see some close interactions between, because of Wong, we probably will see a lot of close interactions between like like everything Shang-Chi related and Doctor Strange. Like they're on the more mystical sides of things, but then like Doctor Strange borderlines between cosmic and mystic. So but I think there's gonna be a lot of interactions on that front. But I love that they're going back and explaining everything to their friend Wu and her Sue and her husband. She's like, "Are you making fun of me?" It's like, "Yeah, I know you got." They're like explaining everything that happens. Like, "Well, where's this sister of yours?" It's like, "Well, she's back dismantling the 10 rings." "Oh, what about, blah, 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 blah." And then Wong pops up and he's like, "Shang-Chi?" He's like, "Yeah, here." It's like, "Yo." He's like, "I'm Wong." It's like, "No, yo, we know who you are, big fan." He's like, "We need you to come with us." "You too." And Katie's like, "Me too." It's like, "Yeah, I know this is a lot to take in, but don't worry, I'll Venmo you." And so they go through. And lo and behold, I'm like, dude, Wong's, talking a little bit about the rings. It's like, yeah, his dad had them for 1,000 years, but they've been here way longer. But it also seems like they're sending, because he was like, we could feel it here, like, when you were using the rings. But it's like, it's also sending a message to something else. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I guess, because I guess we're going to go into the heart of, like, where these rings come from. Maybe they come from a different dimension or world. And so maybe their original owner, maybe they're calling out to their owner, somehow they found themselves on the, I mean, everything's found its way to this earth, the Asgardians found their way to this earth, other alien species that found their way to this earth, vibranium, because they're trying to figure it out, because it's Bruce and Carol. I'm like, yo! Also, I think it's so important to notice, like, cool, Bruce still got the messed up arm, and he's Bruce Banner. He's not Smart Hulk anymore. I'm like, why did that change? So we probably won't get answers until maybe She-Hulk. I'm assuming that's where we'll get answers for that potentially. But I love the whole like introduction, like, because it's like, oh, could this be vibranium? Could this be Chitauri? And it's like, right, Carol's got stuff to go back to, which I'm like, oh, she's got the long hair again. I guess showcasing it has been some time, but I'm like, I wonder, have you talked to Monica? That's what I'm like. That's all I could think of. Cause we also know like Miss Marvel's like right around the corner too. So obviously like what that's setting up for like the Marvels. But I'm like, dude, it's just the point of it is introducing them to us is like, right, your lives, like this is going to be a lot to take in, but your lives, now that you stepped into this, there's no going back. I love it. It's like Carol's like, yeah, Bruce, give him my number. He's like, I don't have her number. She does this all the time. Like, welcome to the circus, guys. I'm like, yeah. I mean, to the, outside of the movie, it's like that's what that represents, but also just in the universe, like, hey, Shang-Chi and Katie, welcome to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just, dude. But I love that Wong is like, you need to get rested. They're like, yeah, we should. And Katie's like, and now they're singing karaoke with Wong. I'm like, I love that they still keep their silly nature. They still keep them. That's definitely going to be so interesting. Like I said, I'm sure we're not done with Tolo, which I hope not, because we need some more Michelle Yeoh. Like, come on. She's in the MCU. We better be using her a lot more going forward. But of course, at the end, Jiling is not dismantling the 10 rings. It's like, cool, I'm gonna make it mine. Now, what that looks like, maybe she has plans to actually do some good. I mean, granted, we don't know what she was doing with her underground fighting ring. Like, yeah, she was doing that, and it was live streaming places, but it wasn't necessarily bad. It was a fighting ring. It's interesting because the moment she was like, they were like, oh, like, they're ready, I thought Sharon Carter was going to be there. Because, we know Sharon, because of the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that Sharon, is the power broker and she's up to shady business. So there's definitely going to probably be some like business connections there. But like I said, we do see that Jiling is changing how things operate, because in Ta Lo, like, both the men and women are equal, so like they do the same training, and she's taking those principles and applying them to the 10 rings. So once again, it's like she could never get her father's empire, but now she has it, and it's like, right, I've always been on the outside looking in, now this is mine to run. How she decides to run it, I'm sure she's going to keep it a huge secret from her brother. Of like, because I like what they say of like, it's not like, oh, Shang-Chi will return. It's the 10 rings will return. Because I'm guessing they're either talking about the organization itself will return, which encompasses all of this, or it's supposed to represent like the Ten Rings themselves, which encompasses Shang-Chi, Katie, Xiling. I'm so curious to see what she does with that, and it's because just like Shang-Chi can use the rings for good, unlike his father did. Maybe Xiling can do the same thing. Like both of them are continuing their father's legacy, potentially down a good route, or maybe this is going to put Shang-Chi and him and his sister. Like I think them being the only family they have left, like yeah, but I think it's still going to put them at odds with what they both want for the future. So maybe he plays the role of a hero, maybe she plays an anti-hero, borderline villain. We'll have to wait and see, but this is awesome, and I'm so excited. Obviously, like Eternals is in theaters. I wanted to go see it last week, but I was like, no, I'm gonna wait till this comes on Disney Plus, and I'll watch it then, just because I just wasn't sure how I felt about going to the theaters at the time, and I'm like, I think I'm ready. So I'm gonna probably try and see that sometime this week, whenever I get the chance. So because the opportunity didn't come up last week anyway, but I'm doubling down of like, yeah, I knew this would be coming to Disney Plus soon enough, so I was like, let me watch this first, and then I can be properly got all my canon in order going into Eternals, because I've not watched these movies out of order since they originally came out, so I've watched them subsequently in order ever since. So I've tried not to watch them out of order. I haven't missed a movie either, so it kind of all worked out in the end. So, but I'm very excited, just to, not just for Eternals, but also just like what Shang-Chi, like what this world, that this element that has been brought to the MCU, what this looks like going forward. What else? When's the next time we see Shang-Chi? Anything related to this? It's definitely going to be interesting to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.